name is Xander, and I'm really into World War I. And today, we'll be talking about the mystery of the Celtic Witch, which is when 71 men of the 10th Battalion of the 1st Australian Division went missing during the Battle of Bulkaput.
Johnny, get your gun, get your gun, get your gun. Take it on the run, on the run, on the run. Hear them calling you and me, every son of liberty.
A little bit of background on the 10th Battalion. They were nicknamed the Terrible Ten for their fighting spirit on the Western Front as well as during the Gallipoli campaign, where during the initial landing they held Anzac Cove with other Australian forces. And during the war, 2 of its members were given the Victoria's Cross, which is one of the highest and most prestigious awards that can be given out. Now, following the Battle of Broadside on October 4th, 1917, Sir Douglas Hayes, the leader of the British Expeditionary Force at the time, thought that the German Fourth Army was about to collapse, thinking that they could actually take Passchendaele Ridge. Now, you might be wondering what the 10th Battalion had to do with all of this. Their job during this offensive was to blow up German dugouts and wait for the 2nd Australian Division to come and protect the flank while the main British army actually started advancing. And that's exactly what the 10th Battalion was going to do. At 5:20 a.m. on October 9th, they sent 7 officers and 78 soldiers to start advancing towards German dugouts. Now, British correspondents and Australian newspapers had both said this was a victory, however, it wasn't. The Germans pulled back a week later, making the woods no man's land. Now, this isn't new to the First World War, as a lot of nations had done this, but, you know. Now, after the offensive, the 10th Battalion Commander Maurice Wilder and Elegant had wrote this in his report.
A desperate hand encounter followed, in which heavy casualties were inflicted upon the enemy. I am only able to account for 14 unwounded members of the party.
Now, that's cool and all, but official army records actually state that 37 out of the 85 men were accounted for as missing. The aftermath of this battle, well, this became Australia's biggest mystery during the First World War. Which is a little absurd to me, but you know, you do you Australians. Now, in 2008, some researchers had stated they had solved the mystery. Using wartime diaries, they had seen that these soldiers were basically caught in a hostage situation between the German and British artillery barrages, basically mutilating their bodies so we couldn't tell who they actually were. But, you know what I say to that? I call bullshit. How do these researchers in 2008 know what really happened on those fateful days in the trenches? They don't. That's the answer. But you know what? Luckily for you guys, I have the answer. I spent my whole weekend researching what really happened to these soldiers. And I only have 2 words to you. Belgian folklore. Now, we do have a couple suspects to what actually could have happened to these soldiers, so I'm just going to list them off. Our first ones up are Balkan Riders, or Buck Riders in English. These Buck Riders, which are witches, ride on top of goats given to them by the devil to kill innocent people. Now, follow me for a second. Maybe these Buck Riders were just flying over the forest looking at all the massacres that were happening during the First World War and stumbled across these Australian soldiers running back to their own Allied lines. They could have just swooped them up and took them with them. Maybe to go eat them, or, you know, give them to the devil. We don't really know. This would explain why these soldiers actually vanished and we don't have any trace of them. However, there are some conflicting stories saying that they didn't kill people, they just kidnapped people, like babies and shit. So, I don't know, but these definitely are on the list for culprits. Now, our next suspect are Witweavens, or white women in English. These have conflicting stories on whether they were actually good or bad, but for the sake of this, let's just say these soldiers stumbled across some bad ones. Now, one of the stories about the Witweavens follows a farmer who was walking home one night in the middle of the dark, when 3 of these women had just appeared out of nowhere, asking him to dance. Him agreeing, started basically spinning in a circle the whole time. But the problem was, he couldn't stop. He kept spinning until he died. He was discovered by some other townsfolk, saying that he had died from exhaustion. Now, maybe these soldiers of ours had fallen into temptation. You see, soldiers on the Western Front didn't really see a lot of women they were stuck in the trenches, and probably the only time they saw them were, well, in the hospital. So, not a lot of action's probably happening when people are dying around you, or losing limbs. So, maybe what happened was, these wit weavens appeared out of nowhere, in front of the soldiers, threatening them with a very good time, to only just end up dancing until these soldiers had basically died. Now, this could also lead into our next mythical creature, but for the sake of this, let's just say that they were dead and artillery barrages had mutilated their bodies. This technically would align with the actual story of the researchers. So, maybe wit weavens are actually the cause of this, and the researchers are just trying to cover it up. Now, we have the most scariest mythical creature, in my opinion, as our final beast. Dutch gnomes, or in Dutch, marauders. Now, unlike other European gnomes, these marauders will attack you for being stupid or bothering them. Now follow me for a second. Maybe our dear Australian soldiers had stumbled across an entrance into one of their underground cities. These marauders are not going to be happy because they've had to deal with constant artillery barrages and people running over their cities and just terrible things in general because it is the First World War. So, they take action, capturing these Australian soldiers and taking them into their underground cities to do disgraceful things to them. Like maybe feeding them to their worm pets. I don't know if they have worm pets. I didn't see any, but I like to think they have worms that look like dogs. Now, will we ever know what actually truly happened to these soldiers? Probably not. Maybe it really was these mythical beasts that had captured them, or kidnapped them, or just ate them, or danced with them. Can't forget about you, wit weavens. Or maybe it was just German and British artillery barrages. But who really gives a f***? This is just 37 soldiers out of the 11 million that died in the First World War. This is a small bucket of blood compared to the pools and oceans of it that were fought to keep the war machine going. So, I mean, it doesn't really matter too much in my eyes. But I did find it interesting to research. Okay, bye.